Good evening. I would like to call this special meeting of the Board of Education to order. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education is on Wednesday, April 8th at 7 p.m. For the chairperson's report tonight, thank you all for being here tonight. I want to give an update on the fiscal 27 Board of Education budget process. The Board of Finance meeting on Tuesday, March 31st will be a working session to discuss the Board of Education budget. And the Board of Finance will then vote on the Board of Ed operating and capital budgets on Tuesday, April 7th. Thank you, everyone, for your participation in the budget process this year. We really appreciate your support. Now we'll move on to public comment.
Good evening. If anyone would like to participate in public comment, please approach the podium and wait to be recognized. Once recognized, please state your name and address, or state your name and town of residence for the record, and note that you have up to 3 minutes to comment. We have no public comments this time.
Okay, we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Byrne.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the March 24th Board of Education meeting. Today, Dr. Fettigan and I, along with a team from across the elementary schools, attended the newest session of our Science of Reading course. The focus on today's section was vocabulary development, and it was a very informative day. Congratulations to Kylie Best, our student board member, and the rest of the cast and crew on an amazing run of The Lightning Thief last week. If you didn't have a chance to see it, Kylie was outstanding and did a great job in her role. Our grade 8 students will begin the exciting transition to Darien High School this week when they visit the high school on Friday. They'll hear from students, teachers, and administrators and have the opportunity to learn about the more than 70 clubs offered at the high school. Next Monday at 7 p.m. at the Depot is our second book club meeting, and we will be discussing More Than Just a Game, which offers an insightful look at the high-stakes world of modern youth sports. And that concludes my report for this evening.
Okay, student representative reports. Ryan.
Yeah, so we are nearing the end of our third quarter with it ending a week from today. Reiterating what Dr. Burns said, our Theater 308 production, The Lightning Thief, was a major success with a nearly packed house every night. And lastly, our April 7th SAT day for juniors is nearing in the next 2 weeks. And that's it.
Thank you. We'll now move on to presentation, discussion, and possible action, starting with the elementary schools update. And Dr. Byrne is going to kick us off.
Sure, thank you very much. And we are excited to have our 5 amazing principals with us tonight. So if we go back to our last meeting, we had a chance to hear from some teachers about how the professional learning efforts in literacy this year have impacted their instruction and what they're focusing on in their classrooms and what they're seeing with students. What we're going to hear about tonight is this world of consistency and alignment that we now live in. So some of the structures that you'll hear about tonight are now structures that you would see in all of our K-3 classrooms across all 5 of our schools. So this really focused work and this literacy work, which is our highest priority on the instructional side this year, is making improvements across the board in our reading instruction. And I'm thrilled and appreciative to our 5 principals for being here to talk with us tonight. So take it away, gang.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me? Okay. I'm short, so the microphone has to be a little short as well. Good evening, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to present an update on kindergarten through 3rd grade reading. My name is Natasha Torrey, and I am the principal at Royal School. I am joined by my colleagues Paula Blakely from Holmes, Ryan Betts from Tokenique, Chris Melillo from Oxbridge, and Ross Cooper from Henley. Tonight, we want to clearly articulate why this work is so essential and how it serves as the foundation for all future literacy learning in the Darien Public Schools. I began my career in education as a 1st grade teacher and then literacy specialist. So as a building principal, this work is also near and dear to my heart. We will anchor our presentation in the March 11th Board of Education meeting, where our exceptional teachers shared their learning with InterReading, our primary instructional resource for reading, and illustrated what high-quality literacy instruction looks like in their classrooms. You heard how the implementation of InterReading aligns with our literacy framework and saw firsthand how these practices support students every day. This evening, we'd like to take a step back and focus on the 5 essential components of reading instruction. These components, while visible in classroom practice, are important for us to define explicitly. Our goals tonight are to clarify what each component is, explain why each is critical for developing foundational reading skills, and build a shared understanding of what these components look and sound like across Darien's kindergarten through 3rd grade classrooms. By grounding our work in these essential elements, we ensure that every student receives consistent, evidence-based instruction that sets them up for long-term literacy success. So on the slide, you'll see a quote from author Kate DiCamillo, and her quote is a reminder that reading should be offered to children as a precious gift. And this speaks directly to the heart of our kindergarten through 3rd grade work. While we focus on building foundational skills through the 5 essential components of reading instruction, our ultimate goal is to ensure that every child experiences reading, not as a chore, but as something joyful, empowering, and accessible. By providing consistent, evidence-based instruction and supporting our teachers with high-quality materials, we create the conditions for all students, regardless of their starting point, to develop both the ability and the desire to read. This quote captures our schools and families' shared commitment to nurturing confident, curious, lifelong readers. Kindergarten through 3rd grade reading has long been a district priority, and we continue to work to ensure that every early learner develops the strong foundational reading and writing skills needed for success in grades 3 through 12 and beyond. Our approach is grounded in the science of reading and emphasizes explicit, systematic instruction across all 5 essential components: phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. Each day, students engage in a comprehensive literacy block that includes whole group instruction, small group differentiated teaching, and targeted interventions, informed by ongoing data and progress monitoring. Teachers use aligned materials, structured routines, and evidence-based practices to create consistency across classrooms and support growth for all learners. Throughout the presentation tonight, we will highlight what both teachers and students do during daily reading instruction and how these efforts collectively build the foundation for strong lifelong literacy. So this slide was part of the March 11th presentation, and the Science of Reading slide outlines how children learn to read and emphasizes that explicit systematic instruction in phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. For students in kindergarten through 3rd grade, it ensures foundational skills are taught clearly and sequentially. The science of reading has long guided our approach to early literacy in Darien, providing the evidence-based practices we rely on, regardless of the specific resources or programs we use. So now at this time in the presentation, we will each unpack one of the 5 components. So on the slide, you'll see that I'll be talking about phonemic awareness. And phonemic awareness is the ability to hear, identify, and manipulate individual sounds or phonemes in spoken words. Phonemic awareness is a foundational oral-only skill that supports later phonics, decoding, and spelling. Phonemic awareness is most critical in kindergarten and grade 1, with targeted support is needed in grades 2 and 3. So proficient reading, it all starts with phonemic awareness for our littlest learners. And Mr. Maroney, I think I'm paraphrasing here, but at a previous board meeting, you noted that we have to get early reading instruction right, and you compared it to hockey. You can't play the game well if you can't skate. Phonemic awareness is that skating for our students. If they don't have a strong command of hearing and manipulating sounds and words, the rest of the foundational components simply won't make sense. It is the essential first step that allows everything else in reading to build successfully. During phonemic awareness instruction, teachers provide brief, focused oral lessons in which they model sounds, use explicit and systematic routines such as say it, tap it, blend it, and incorporate multi-sensory supports like hand motions. They guide students through targeted practice, offering clear, immediate feedback to help them accurately hear, identify, and manipulate phonemes. During phonemic awareness instruction for students, students are actively engaged in hearing and manipulating sounds by listening to and repeating phonemes. They're also blending sounds to form words and segmenting words into their individual phonemes. They practice adding, deleting, and substituting sounds, often using movement such as tapping to represent what they hear. All of this work is done orally without print to strengthen their ability to recognize and work with sounds as the foundation for early reading. So I'm going to briefly show you what this looks like in practice. You might remember it from one of the videos on March 11th. So as a teacher, I would say cat, k, at. So as I say each sound, I tap a finger, k, at. Then I blend it together, cat. Now I'm going to make one small change. I swap the k for p, at, pat. So this is phonemic awareness, students hearing, changing, and blending sounds to make new words. And now Paula will talk about the next foundational reading skill, which is phonics.
Thank you, Natasha. So our goal tonight is to help you to understand these 5 different components from the way teachers and students experience it. So I'd like to play off the hockey analogy as well, just to build in that direction. Just as hockey players build from learning to skate to mastering puck handling, passing, and shooting while skating, understanding phonics is the next phase of learning to read. So we move from just hearing the sounds and manipulating the sounds to now we're going to connect all of those sounds to visual symbols. So phonics instruction is explicitly teaching the relationship between sounds and letters or letter patterns. Phonics principles are also taught in a systematic, explicit, and cumulative progression, building from simple to more complex. And I'm going to try to walk you through that this evening. This slide shows what the teacher and the student might be doing during phonics instruction in the classroom. And our highly skilled teachers also shared some great examples of this at the last board meeting. But to round this out, I'd like to provide a high-level view of how phonics instruction progresses from kindergarten through grade 2, the years when students are focused on learning how to read. There should be a 1-page reference titled Systematic Phonics Progression in your materials that you received, as this component of reading instruction can be a lot to take in and there's a lot of jargon. It might help you to follow along as I walk you through it. So if you want to take time to find that. In general, the majority of learners are ready for instruction along the continuum that I'm going to describe. However, there are times where kids are not quite there yet, and those students would receive intervention. So in kindergarten, after mastering phonemic awareness, and while mastering phonemic awareness, the focus is really mostly around the fact that each sound is represented by a letter. So letters represent sounds, and teachers have students practice matching letters and sounds and symbols. Students also learn that there's a predictable connection between how sounds and letters work together. So teachers help students to blend and segment sounds to read and write what we call consonant, vowel, consonant words. So like Natasha said, cat. So when she tapped, they were hearing the sounds in cat. The next step in phonics is to connect those sounds to letters. So we say k, that's a C, that's an A, t, that's a T, cat. And so that although feels simple to us, that's a lot of work for our 5-year-olds and something that we spend a lot of time on in kindergarten. At the end of kindergarten, we begin to focus on one-syllable words and consonant blends. So we do that at the end of kindergarten and into first grade. And in a consonant blend, you can hear the sound made by each of 2 letters that are together. For example, the word clap, you can hear the k, l, and then app. So you can hear the C and the L in the word clap. So our kindergartners then can put those 2 letters that are working together with a consonant, with a vowel and another consonant. So it feels like a consonant vowel consonant word, but now there's 2 letters at the beginning. Then in first grade, we increase the complexity of how letters and sounds work. So sometimes a single sound is then represented by more than 1 letter. Those are called, they're consonant digraphs, where 2 letters work together to make 1 sound. So for example, ship, the SH makes the sh sound. Or math, the TH says th at the end of math. In first grade, they also work on consonant, vowel, consonant, silent E words, which we call magic E words. And magic E, we say, makes the vowel say its name, or it's a long vowel. So for example, the word tote, you can hear a long O in the word tote, or shake. Then at the end of first grade and into second grade, we add more complexity relating how vowels work. And so students learn that vowels can work in teams to make 1 long vowel sound. For example, in the word rain, A and I makes the A sound, or in the word sleep, EE makes the E sound. They also learn that vowels can work together to create a diphthong, where your tongue slides from 1 vowel position to the next, and we can hear 2 sounds in that situation. So for example, the word oil, you can hear the oil, I'm not very good at that one, or fluid. And then in first grade, they also learn that when the letter R follows a vowel, it changes the vowel sound from what you might expect it to say. So for example, the word art, or corn, or march. And then finally, in second grade, we move on to the last part of phonics, which is being able to read multi-syllabic words. And those are longer words that are made up of shorter parts called syllables. And they can be decoded, read, or encoded, spelled, bit by bit, using what students know about those words. So for example, they might read a compound word like cupcake. So they can sound out cup, they can sound out cake, and they can put that together. They learn prefixes like RE and reread, or DE and decode. And they learn suffixes like ING or ness and kindness. So we just wanted to kind of walk you through that, because that's a lot of the work that gets done between kindergarten and second grade. By third grade, we're reinforcing a lot of that, but by that time, most students are pretty competent in phonics, although it's still taught in third grade, but they're moving in third grade from learning how to decode and read to reading to learn. So developing strong phonetic understanding is essential for students to develop accurate and automatic word reading. And now Ryan will show you how students use their knowledge of phonics and other information to read fluently.
Thank you. All right. Hello, everyone. Okay, so just like Paul and Natasha had, I've got the slide up there for fluency. You'll see a definition at the top, then you'll see 2 columns. One describing what teachers are doing to build fluency, and one describing what students are doing to build fluency. I'll read the definition and then add some color to it. So fluency is defined as the ability to read text with accuracy, appropriate rate, and good expression. Fluency is an accurate indication of overall reading ability and has a correlation with reading comprehension. In simpler terms, fluency is where the rubber meets the road in reading. And as a hockey player, I'm going to jump onto that hockey analogy as well. In hockey terms, it's when a player can move from thinking about skating and thinking about stick handling, putting it all together and playing the game, if you will. They're in that flow state. They're focused on the game. They're not thinking about their feet. They're not thinking about their hands. It's all together. Reading works the same way. At first, students are focused on coding, figuring out each word. But with practice, the brain reaches automaticity. They can read smoothly and even begin to anticipate what's coming next. In sports, we have the eye test. You might see an athlete and you say, oh, they can play that game. I can see that. In reading, it's the ear test. You can hear, you know what fluent reading sounds like. It's smooth. It's got a natural, expressive tone to it. It's not choppy and robotic. Students build fluency through repeated reading of familiar texts. If you have little children, you might remember they bring home the same book over and over again. Then they bring home another book and they've got 2 or 3 and they just read those books over and over again. And that helps build that automaticity, that smoothness, helps the brain begin to anticipate there's another word coming. And over time, that repeated reading of the same text, those skills can be applied to a new text that they haven't seen before. We might call that a cold text. And once students are fluent, their focus shifts to what matters most, understanding what they're reading. And really, you know, as Paula alluded a minute ago, once they can read fluently, we begin to build that bridge from learning to read to reading to learn. And now I'm going to pass it over to Chris, who will talk a little bit about vocabulary.
I'm also height impaired, so work on the mic. So I'm going to talk vocabulary, and vocabulary development is a key component of literacy instruction and supports the student's ability to comprehend texts, communicate ideas clearly, and access learning across all subjects. A strong vocabulary helps students make meaning from what they read and express their ideas with greater precision and engage more confidently in discussion and writing. In our schools, teachers intentionally build students' vocabulary by explicitly teaching word meanings and the morphological components of words, such as the prefixes, the roots, and suffixes. Instruction uses high-impact research-based strategies that promote active engagement and repeated practices and includes teaching words in meaningful context, using student-friendly definitions, visuals, concept maps, and exposing students to rich vocabulary through read-alouds and content-based texts. And many board members came to Oxbridge to visit the classrooms, and you saw our teachers using those high-impact strategies that included audio, visual, bodily, kinesthetic, tactile, learning many ways, much of it active out of their seats. So just not reading definitions and trying to understand them, rote memorization, but really trying to embed that learning so that, like the hockey analogy, that it becomes second nature to them. Students reinforce their learning through collaborative activities such as card sorts and matching exercises. Then it helps them deepen their understanding of language and apply new vocabulary across reading, writing, and content areas. Although my colleagues have chosen to use hockey as an analogy to explain the science of reading, I'm just going to say that the vocabulary used in a hockey game is probably not appropriate for this meeting here. So I'm going to pass it over to Ross, who will provide a summary of comprehension.
Thank you, Chris. So in our classrooms, literacy instruction is intentionally designed to develop thoughtful, strategic readers. Teachers create learning experiences that help students see reading as an active thinking process rather than a passive task. They provide clear, structured opportunities for students to engage with text in meaningful and purposeful ways. By making their own thinking visible, teachers help students understand what proficient reading really looks like. This transparency builds confidence and gives students concrete strategies they can apply independently, which is one of the goals of what we do each and every day with students. Instruction is carefully scaffolded so that all learners can access complex texts and ideas. Teachers also create a culture where curiosity and questioning are valued as part of the learning process. As students are exposed to increasingly complex language and ideas, they're supported in making sense of subtle and nuanced meaning. Students, in turn, take ownership of their learning and actively engage with what they read, as opposed to passive consumption. They learn to track their thinking in ways that make their understanding visible to themselves and to their teachers. When confusion arises, students are equipped with strategies to work through challenges rather than disengage. They are encouraged to reflect upon their thinking and refine their understanding over time. Writing and conversation are used as tools to deepen comprehension and extend their learning. Students build confidence as they share their ideas and respond to the thinking of others rather than just reading independently. They're also reading in pairs and groups and working and writing in groups as well. Through these experiences, they develop the skills and habits necessary to become independent, critical readers who engage with a wide range of texts. And I think it's important that we understand that when we're talking about this, whether it's reading and writing and literacy and learning in general, we're talking about not just a certain subset of learners and students, but all students who could reach this potential. And now I'll pass it over to Paula to bring it on home.
Thank you. So in summary, high quality literacy instruction is the cornerstone, obviously, of our elementary schools. And science of reading really does ground our approach. Foundational skills, such as we described tonight, serve as the building blocks of teaching students how to read. Phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension. Once these skills are established, instruction can then shift toward helping students to use their reading skills to learn. This work continues throughout their time in school and beyond. Thank you. And at this point, I think we can open it up for questions.
Thank you very much for this very helpful presentation, and thank you all for being here. I just have one question initially just about science of reading, because my children were in kindergarten in like 2012. So I think there was a time that Darien schools did not teach phonics and phonemic awareness, or they used to, and then they didn't, and then they did again. And I think one of my children went through that period where they didn't get the phonemic awareness teaching. So I'm just curious what the evolution was and how long we've actually been using science of reading specifically. And I'm assuming that the interreading with HMH is based on this as well. So if you can just address that. Thank you.
Absolutely, yes. So I came in 2012, or 2011, 2012, so I can speak from then on. But I know soon after I got here, we implemented Foundations and Heggerty. So Heggerty is the phonemic awareness part. The whole program of Heggerty is phonemic awareness. And then the phonics was through the Foundations program that we were using. So those two components were a part of what we do or did then. And then the vocabulary work was done through the read alouds. It was not a formal vocabulary program necessarily, but it was done within the context of what teachers were teaching. And it was also done through the content areas. In terms of fluency, that's something we've always worked on, repeated readings. I'm sure that your kids were doing a lot of that. I don't know that you can get away with teaching kids to read without it. And then the comprehension work was something we've always been doing quite deeply. Kids are turning and talking, discussing books. They're in book clubs. They're doing a lot of stop and jots when they're reading so that they're writing down their thoughts or ideas as they're reading. So the components have all been there, but they weren't in one program. So the HMH program has all of those things blended together. So that's why the professional development has been so important this year, because it's a shift from programs that we were familiar with and knew how they worked to learning a completely different way of connecting everything together. So those half days that we've had, I know have been challenging for families, but I can tell you that for our teachers, it has been a lifeline this year. So learning that there's so many materials in this one program. So So in the past, when we were learning Heggerty or Foundations, we had 2 years to learn Heggerty, 2 years to learn Foundations. Now we're learning all 5 components all at once in 1 year. So the teachers really do need that time. Not that they don't know how to teach those things, but they have to learn how to teach those things using the new materials and the new way of connecting everything. Do you want to add on? Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I want to open it up to board questions. Joanna?
Thank you. I have 2 separate questions about classroom libraries. The first is, I was at the last CDSP meeting, and a lot of the PTO chairs brought up that there was the district was looking for decodable texts. There weren't enough decodable texts in each classroom. And I'm wondering, is that something that's not provided in HMH or just a resource that hasn't been discovered yet?
So we have lots of decodable texts. The problem in elementary school is that our kids get really good really fast and they need lots of books. So just having 5 or 6 decodable books at a certain decoding level isn't enough for a child who can go through that in maybe a couple weeks. And so the teachers are really looking for lots and lots of decodables. But do you want to add on about HMH?
I think it's also similar to what Ryan said about fluency and automaticity. You want to have a lot of different titles to be able to go in and read and practice with. So that's just building on what Paula has said. So certainly HMH has decodables, and we have decodables that have been in our libraries that again line up with those phonics skills. So if you're learning the short vowels, if you're learning the blends, so that way once it's taught, then you're able to apply it and generalize it in that decodable text. So that's why it just makes sense to have as many different titles as you can. And then when you pull a small group, so students that are working on the same skill, then you have multiple titles of that skill. So we do have we do have decodable text, we have HMH readers, and we have some other series of decodable texts that students and teachers have access to.
Okay. And I think for those of you that may not know what decodable texts are, they are texts that are aligned to each of those different phonics skills that we were talking about. So if I'm learning about CVC words and I'm reading a decodable text at that level, that book is going to have lots and lots of CVC words in it. So I get to practice that a lot. And so that's the reason for needing so many different books, because there are so many different stages that they're moving through. And then, we need multiple copies to do the small groups with. Does that help?
Yeah. And I guess this is a question we can come back to, I don't know, next budget cycle or just in general, like, is this something that the board should be supplying or funding?
Yeah, I think, Amy, I know you have some plans with some text, right? Some decodable text.
Yeah, so one thing we know that sometimes books go home and they don't always come back. They might be found under beds, when we clean rooms before summer break. I was saying, when we met with CDSP, I have a calculator that I think our new puppy chewed. So we'll need to go back and from one of the Fedigans. So one of the messages that we want to get out there is that the decodable texts are absolutely intended to go home. Those are meant to be in children's hands, and we understand that there is a normal cycle of replacing those. And the board, I know, it has said many times, tell us what you need. So that we'll continue to do. We also have some funds available for classroom libraries. We want to make sure that we have decodable text in classrooms, and also classroom libraries that are beyond those decodable texts, because we're talking about the joy of reading. And it's important for children to have access to those as well. So one of the things that we're taking a look at is the classroom libraries and thinking about how to have a replacement cycle so that we can ensure that those are robust and we're keeping an eye and nobody is getting a thin library.
So we do have money included in this budget for more decodable texts, more classroom library books. And that will be something that you'll see every year.
Yeah, should be on.
And then my second question was, and this is based on my experience with kids in elementary school, so it's been a while. We used to have Just Right books. That to me, that was very much part of the Teachers College Workshop method. I'm wondering, do you still do that? Do kids still get reading levels, or is that totally gone?
So to Amy's point, we use a balance of different types of books. So we still want to sit down next to a reader and assess what their skills look like in a book. And while those books might have that letter assigned to it, the letter, it was meant to assign features of the book. So whether that's patterns, whether that's sentences that go onto another page, whether it's longer paragraphing or things like that, skills that children need to have to be able to read those types of books. So while we're teaching the phonics progressions and we want students to also be able to decode for those phonics skills, then we also want them to be able to apply the skills into more natural text. So it's a balance of both. So we're still assessing to see how children can read fluently, accurately, and comprehend in a book that makes sense for them and matches them as an independent reader, along with matching them to a decodable text where they can practice those skills as well. So it's a balance of both. I don't know if you'd add on to that.
Yeah, and I mean, just to build off the fluency piece and comprehension piece, I mean, we're always trying to match readers with the right text, right? Like just right enough, the Goldilocks, sort of analogy of like not too hard, not too easy, just right for them. Although repeated readings of easy text is a good thing. I think one of the challenges we have here in our district is our kids are really smart and good readers, and sometimes they can read really fluently and not comprehend some of the more nuanced messages and more complex text. So we're sort of measuring two things. Do they understand what they're reading, and are they reading with enough accuracy and rate, so fluency to get through it comfortably? But yeah, just right books are still something we think about, matching the reader to the text.
And I'll just add one more thing. A lot of those decodable books don't feel real because there's so many words that are carefully chosen and contrived to fit whatever decodable skill they're working on. While they're way better than the Dick and Jane books that existed a long time ago, the ability to really infer and get deep meaning out of stories is not always there. You don't get as much imagery. You don't get all of the other pieces of literacy that we want to be teaching. So our presentation tonight is about teaching kids how to read, like how to break the code and read. But that comprehension piece and all those other levels of understanding don't always show up in those decodable books. So you need the other just right books to do that with.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you so much for this, and thank you for your answers. A lot of the explanations and the depth that you guys are going into the books and why they're different and how they, this is some of the best conversation that we've had in a while. So I really appreciate it. Can you talk to me a little bit about how the five of you are talking and working together through this new curriculum, and maybe what opportunities there might be for your teachers as well to be talking outside of their building, just to that whole piece of consistency across the district? What does that look like for you?
We work really hard to be aligned to ensure that we're in lockstep and that the messaging is clear and in the same. We all participate in the same professional development that our teachers are involved in. We're active participants in that, and we're lifetime learners as well, right? So I'm an old man, so I've seen the reading wars shift from basal readers to whole language to balanced literacy to science of reading and probably back again. With that being said, it's important that we stay up to date on the research. So we meet regularly. We meet once as a team a week. We also meet again with Dr. Fettigan and Jen Falcone, also weekly. And on our agendas, we talk about where we are, where our teachers are, where we can be better, what our observations are when we go into classrooms. We also implement our instructional rounds where we go in and our teachers learn from each other. So it's a lot of communication. It's a lot of meeting together. It's also messaging and ensuring that our messages are aligned so that teachers aren't hearing different messages from any one of us. So, you know, we're learning it as well with our teachers, and we roll up our sleeves and do the work with them. And really, we model the learning and try to stay in line as a 5 schools, but as one message that comes out from all of us.
Thank you.
And I'll just add to, we had a trainer at HMH at our school today. And she gave us our district a glowing compliment and said, I go to a lot of districts and I never see the administrators when I walk in the building. And she said, it's so nice to come here and have not only the principal, but assistant principals around the table. We were in and out, we still had our meetings and you had to address things, but she just said, it's really nice to work here and be partnering with you guys because you have a real commitment to the work. And so, it's just a testament to how we work with our teachers and work together.
And we do have the time where our teachers come together as grade level groups from across the schools during the professional learning days, during the early release days that we've had this year. And they do work collaboratively on the same topic with the coaches from HMH.
So like on a professional learning day, all the second grade teachers from the district will be with an HMH coach for a period of time, and then we rotate. So third grade would go and they talk across and amongst themselves. We also have the pacing guide, which, they email each other, they text each other, so they're making sure that everyone's staying on pace within a certain window or two. So.
Thank you.
Other board questions? Bill?
First off, I think it's amazing. So I have a 4th grader, and the idea that from kindergarten to 3 that you can progress them so quickly is nothing short of astounding. So I've seen it firsthand as well. I did want to piggyback off of Joanna's point about books. And maybe I'm not hearing it correctly, but if there were a need for more books of any particular type that you wanted, I would not, for me, want you to wait for a budget cycle. I would be more than willing to do a supplemental request, whatever resource you need.
Watch out.
But just for books, and that's why we're here, so.
We appreciate it.
But I don't know if I probably didn't hear that good, right? So.
No, we're good. I will tell you if we need, absolutely.
You have to find a receptive audience.
And I think what happens is that the teachers will share their needs as they come up. And then we sort of have to look across the system. And
Sure.
And it's also a first time through with the new resource. So there's things we're learning that we need to have more of that we budgeted for and where we're getting our hands on. So we appreciate that.
That's great. So this is kind of a semi-personal question. My son talks about foundations, and I still don't have a good Can one of you please explain what is foundations?
Foundations is just the name of a program. It's fun, but it plays off of foundational skills. But it is a phonics program. So the slide that I talked about where they go from kindergarten up through 2nd grade, foundations is the phonics part of learning how to read. And that goes all the way up through 3rd grade because there are still some multi-syllabic words that they're working through how to figure out and a lot of morphology. So you'll see that. And it goes into 4th and 5th grade too, but foundations itself goes up to 3rd.
Okay. It was always one of my favorite at words, cat, bat, rat,
Yeah.
cat. I remember that font. Thank you.
Other board questions? Sarah?
Thank you for this. Curious, we've talked about K-3 literacy for years. Talk to me about 4 to 5. What's going to happen? What do you see happening? What needs to change? We just love to, I feel like K-3 is in a really good spot now. So what's going to happen when these kids that are now have, a different foundation with foundations? How do you anticipate changing 4 or 5? What do you see happening?
Right, so. So similar to how we did a deep dive in reviewing all of this work for K3, the next step is working with Dr. Fedigan and a team across the district to look at a core review 3-6. So just to your point, what's working, what are foundational skills that are really important in K3? And then as we shift to looking at grades 4 and beyond, what are the foundational skills that need to be taught in 4th and 5th grade, but then also what need to be built on, which you've heard tonight is the comprehension or writing about reading, analyzing text, summarizing, those sorts of skills. So we're in the work right now, meeting as a district team. There's a steering committee and a core review team. So we're also linking that to our high quality instruction document. So also all the components that make sense for how to teach along with what to teach. We're doing that work now. So that way as students move up with this new resource in reading, it's aligned and coherent and meeting the needs of older learners as well.
Great, and I love that you said 3 to 6, so there are middle school teachers included and.
Yeah, that's intentional,
Yeah,
right?
it's great.
And so you can imagine next time it'll be 5-9,
Right.
right? And so the only other thing I would add to that, and thanks so much, Natasha and Paula have been on the steering committee and the core leadership team leading that work from the beginning since we got the waiver. One of the things that we're going to do is also connect the K3 instructional framework to 4-5 because children's reading progresses differently in those upper grades as we've talked about tonight. And really, we have a number of teachers that are on that committee who are really invested in the work. And we have a 3rd grade teacher there who's able to carry the work forward and talk about that experience. The other thing is, with regard to vocabulary, we were at the CAPS convention today, or conference today, and it was all about vocabulary. And I was sitting next to Natasha. Natasha said, we're doing that so much better right now. Like, this is like, she's like, I'm feeling really good about this, quote unquote. So we know that, and there are many things, I'll talk to teachers about certain skills that kids are having because of the scope and sequence. They're doing those things with regard to vocabulary and even grammar in English language much sooner than they were before. So that's going to require us to look at the scope and sequence, the curriculum documents. And again, these are resources. And so we need to make sure that we're responsive to the pace in which our kids move in Darien.
Could I just add? real
Yeah.
quick? I just want to make just a statement around the science of reading and the program. If the program was actually, well, first of all, we're all readers here around the table, right? So we all learned how to read prior to HMH coming aboard. And why I say that is that the program is the program, but the reality is that reading is taught through high quality instruction. The program is the materials that we use. The focus is really on what practices we're doing to ensure that our students are getting what they need. And HMH does a really nice job of bundling the materials that are necessary to promote that. But we are ensuring that high quality instruction is happening in 4th and 5th grade also. So when we have professional development, for example, at our schools, we've kind of leveraged our staff meeting times to implement it as time for professional development. So if you will come to Ox Ridge the first Friday of our month when we have our staff meeting, we're having professional development during our staff meeting time. I don't need an agenda to go, if I can put it in an email, I can give it to my teachers. I don't need to have a meeting to tell them that. But to provide them with some PD on really high quality strategies, that's really going to move students forward. So, eventually the district's going to look at, whether we move to a different program or not. And that may make sense because then there's a through line K5. But in the meantime, we're ensuring that the high quality instruction is happening in our 4th and 5th grades also.
Thank you.
And I'll just add, I know, Dennis, you asked me this question directly a while ago. Is any program the answer to our question, which is not the case. It's teacher skill and teacher knowledge. So programs are resources and giving our teachers the support to develop those skills, to know what to do with it. That's the key.
And just remember, HMH was chosen because it was the resource that had the most things bundled the way we thought made sense for teaching kids how to read. But in 4th and 5th grade, we're not necessarily teaching that as much anymore because most kids can read by then. So the focus is going to shift on now you know how to read. How do you read to learn? How do you read well? What do you do with those skills? So that may require a different type of approach. So we want to be open-minded about where we head next.
Other board questions? Dennis?
Yeah, so just in full transparency, I have no idea. I am an awful skater, so I can play floor hockey fairly well, but skating is not my forte. And just a point about books and kids bringing books, it made me recall something. When my daughter was in kindergarten, she brought home The Rescuers every day from September until November. My birthday was in November. And I said, can you please bring home a different book for Dad? Because I'm really tired of reading The Rescuers. So she came home, she's beaming. She's like, Dad, I got a new book for you. I'm like, yeah, what? I'm so excited to read it. She pulls it out of her backpack. Rescuers Down Under. So excited. Anyway, I was like, you need to find another section of the library to look for a book. But seriously, a question for me in phonics and fluency, do we also teach tongue placement and how to speak and how to correct children on ways of speaking? And, you know, TH, your tongue goes at your teeth, and D, your tongue goes at the roof of your mouth, and so on and so forth? Or is that only for special learners who need help speaking?
Sure.
I would say it's both. So the best example I can think of is that there's hard TH and soft TH. So and then 3, right? So you might explain the difference between the hard TH and the soft TH, and then anything beyond that, you then might talk about, you know, where your tongue goes or the breath or things like that. And then certainly beyond that initial approach, if it was more specialized, or if it was more articulation based, you know, that would be something that's more specialized. But certainly that's also when you talk about TH or when you talk about those letter names and letter sounds, it's the first place to do it. Even we try to clip sounds. So you say k instead of ka. So there isn't that A at the end. So that helps with the pronunciation. That helps when you have to write it or read it. So there are those beginning things that you're doing in terms of that, but anything beyond it might be more articulation based. I'm not sure if you want to add on or if Shirley you have anything to add on to that. Okay.
I think also the modeling that teacher does. So when we do, you know, I don't want to talk about COVID, but I'm just going to give an example. When COVID had happened and teachers were using distance learning and putting books on video, the video does not, although they're nice to look at, students don't get to touch the book, feel the book, turn the pages, which way do the pages turn, reading from left to right, but also the enunciation that the teacher is doing during their read aloud is a learned experience for our children, right? So we take it for granted when we read to our children, but they're picking up on tongue placement, mouth movements, really all of that seeps into the learning experience. I never want to go back to video learning. I just you can't replace teacher. But that read aloud experience that many of you have with your own children is a learning experience for them. Not just how to read, but how to enunciate.
And a second question as well.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys have ever seen these YouTube videos. There's this guy who has a whiteboard and just puts up simple words like here, H-E-A-R. And then he crosses out the H and puts B. And the guy's like, and it's him, but in a different, he's like, bear? No, he's like, it's beer, you know, and it's very hysterical. But how do we deal with the discrepancies of here and bear and wind and wind and so on and so forth? And there's so many discrepancies in English that, you know, I don't remember my kids learning them, but how does the program work with those? I mean, when it's easy, but when it's difficult, it's very confusing.
We do have a lot of whiteboards, individual whiteboards. on the board learning walk, we actually saw kids doing some work on their whiteboards, but that they might go on YouTube someday with their individual whiteboards, but
So, a lot of it's done, it starts with phonics and phonemic awareness, as Natasha and Paula have so eloquently put it. The majority of the words that students learn at the primary level that are one syllable actually are more regular than you think, but there are some irregular words. So what the research tells us is to first teach the parts of the word that might be more predictable, like you were talking about, like wind and wind. So you would start with the w and the, and then after that, you would code that and say, okay, this is what's predictable. Now let's focus on what's not predictable. So you're first solidifying the regular, and then you're going to the irregular, and then students map the sounds to the words the sounds to the letters, as opposed to simple like rote memorization, which would be more of a whole language approach. I'm trying to think what else, but that's really, and then there's also high frequency words as well, which factor into it. And some of those words are irregular, and the same thing would be done with that. So like a word the would be something that's used all the time that would be irregular, or the word of would actually be irregular. And those are words that teachers would interweave into the curriculum very early on, because it's necessary for students to learn them, both for the reading and the writing. But the focus with all of that is to focus on the regular sounds and letters first that are phonemically accurate. And then after that, focus on what's inaccurate. But there are very few words at the primary level that have more than one irregular sound, if you actually think about it. So it's not as irregular as we would think in the English language. Did I get that right? Yes.
Are there other board questions? Katie?
This is maybe for Eric and Amy first, and I apologize for not asking in advance. I did notice that the materials today said K through reading, but for the literacy, are we talking about writing as well today?
not tonight with the.
That's
presentation.
coming separate.
Yeah.
Okay, then I will hold my questions.
All right.
Sorry, Greg.
Thank you all for the time and materials. When you think about the program, are there any like shortfalls, issues that you would highlight that you've identified, either the program itself, the materials, the implementation? I know we're creating sort of standards across. Any issues that you see across any of that? Outside of shortage of books?
As Chris said, any program is going to have things that aren't as good. And I often think, my husband's into audio, and he talks about how if you buy a system that has, I'm old, a cassette player in it, a CD player in it, a radio in it, all in one component, it's never as good as if you buy separate components, right? So when I think of a program that has everything in it, you're getting everything, but it may not be the best of everything. And so our teachers don't know yet, because they have to live it for a while and they have to see how kids respond to it. But the good news is they're highly skilled. And so they're going to bring in things from other approaches or other things that they know and weave that in with the HMH program. So I think I can't identify anything specifically right now that I would be worried about, but I do think it's important for us to remember that there's a lot in the program, but it may not always be the best way to do it. And so you have to really judge that and figure that out with the learners in front of you and then adjust. I don't know if that feels like a dodge or if that's a
No,
good answer.
and it's helpful because as we think about going forward, like sharing those best practices, to the extent teachers are bringing additional resources in, like that's where that connectivity is going to be so critical, and that communication is going to be so important amongst you all and amongst the teachers.
Yeah, and it's like what Chris said, it's really about developing the skill sets of the teachers for instructional, capacity, because programs come and go, things change. You never know if a program goes out of business. So we're invested here in investing in our people, not necessarily the program. So as shortcomings emerge, we'll have the capacity to overcome.
Are there other board questions?
That's great. I love hearing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this presentation, and I'm sure we'll be excited to see more when we get more to the grade 4, 5 level after you've done that work. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Okay. All right, we are now going to move on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Joanna, seconded by Dennis. I'm going to go through the items on the consent agenda. We have approval of minutes, the February 26th financial report and proposed transfers, of which there are none currently. Proposed Board of Education policies, 6840, graduation requirements, 5130, attendance and truancy, 5020, child abuse and assault response policy and reporting procedure, 6930, parental access to instructional material, and 4400, social media. Additionally, we have acceptance of contemplated gift for DHS band NOLA trip, acceptance of contemplated gift for Hindley Teachers Lounge renovation, acceptance of contemplated gift for DHS Boys and Girls Ski Teams Downhill Ski Timer, acceptance of contemplated gift for DHS Boys and Girls Tennis Teams tents and roller bags, acceptance of contemplated gift for DHS football teams coach headsets, acceptance of contemplated gift for DHS Girls lacrosse film services, acceptance of contemplated gift for DHS Boys lacrosse film services, and committee reports and personnel report. Is there any desire to have discussion on specific parts of the consent agenda? Joanna?
The memo on the curriculum committee. And I watched the meeting. It was mentioned that they're working on the schedule. I feel like this is something that we've been talking about at the middle school for a long time, trying to give kids more choice. And since we have this middle school presentation coming up, it would be great to really understand why we've been talking about this for so long, but have made no progress, particularly when it comes to music and arts and the ability for a student to lean harder one way and another, otherwise I have to wait all the way till they get to high school to do that.
We can add that.
Thank you. Other board members asking for a discussion on specific items? So I will just reiterate, there were no transfers in the financial report. And I want to thank all of the different organizations and individuals who have provided these extensive gifts to our schools and various teams. So thank you very much from the Board of Education in your support of our schools. With that, all in favor of approving the consent agenda? That is unanimous. Thank you. May I have a motion? Oh, wait a minute. We have public comment? Follow-up action items. So as a follow-up, we'll have Joanna's request to add to the middle school Board of Education agenda, the discussion of the choice that was covered in the curriculum committee. Thank you, Joanna. Followed by public comment.
Good evening. If you would like to participate in public comment, please approach the podium and state your name and town of residence for the record. And please note that you'll have up to 3 minutes to comment. We have no public comment at this time.
Thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? Joanna, seconded by Sarah. All in favor?